Hi, this is Nehal Kazim, and this is the Ad Tips for Ad Pros podcast, where we teach entrepreneurs and marketers how to grow their businesses with direct response advertising. Hi, this is Nehal from Ad Tips for Ad Pros, and today we have my good friend Alon Shabo that's going to come on, and we're going to be talking about introducing new offers into a market where you already have some sort of list that you've been developing, a customer list that you've been acquiring, and then now you want to provide them a high ticket offer to just extract more value and increase the lifetime value from your overall list. And so Alon's going to talk about how he did that and how he added $400,000 in revenue from a relatively small list of buyers, 34 specifically. So looking forward to it, Alon. Thank you for coming on, man.
Yeah, for sure. I'm excited.
Sweet. So if you can tell us what is the offer and what was like the end result from the offer that you guys created, and then we can talk about, first of all, like how you defined it, how you validated it, and then how you promoted it.
Damn, no small talk. Okay, I like it. So let's get some background so people have context.
Sure.
So this, because I don't think this is applicable to people selling $7 ebooks or something, right? So I work primarily in personal development, a lot of seminars. So this specific client had a membership program, probably similar to what you have with your advertising stuff. So it was a monthly membership. People paid every month, but people would drop off. The average lifetime value was about 3-4 months.
Got it.
So the problem we were trying to solve is how do we get people to stick? And just based on preliminary discussions, the solution was, well, we need to sell people on a yearly thing. And I actually learned this from Russell Brunson. We had dinner with the specific client, and he was saying, he's like, dude, people don't want to see their credit card charged every month. That means you have to resell them every month. So it's much more effective to charge someone 12 grand once when they're excited versus 1,000 every month. It's much easier to do it the first time and one time. So yeah, that was the problem we were trying to solve. Should we get into the solution, or do you want to talk about other stuff?
Yeah, let's go through that, because there's a big difference for a lot of people when they're trying to make even a one-time $1,000 sale. And so the approach you had was like, okay, we're just going to go straight to 12K. And so with that, is that 12K if they pay up front, or how does that work?
Well, first off, to preface, they've already paid money to come to an event. So this was a sales letter distributed at a live event, for example. So yeah, I mean, this kind of offer, like, you for sure need someone to spend money first, just to build that initial trust and to understand that you're legit and what you give them is like good for them. You know, I think it would be quite difficult to convince someone like, hey, commit to me for a year without giving them at least a day of seeing what this is about and what the future may look like.
And this is so important for advertisers who are already having like momentum in their business, because what happens is that majority of advertising campaigns is, I'm going to spend $1. If I can make more than $1, I'm super happy. But there are levels to this. And what ends up happening is that if you just have a front end offer or maybe a secondary offer, there's still so much money left on the table because there are people who want to give you more money. So if you could talk about even just like the psychology of how you approached this when it comes to people wanting to give more because they already invested a little bit, but there wasn't a high ticket.
Yep. And just to preface what you said about making money on the front end, that's incredible, because the e-commerce business I'm involved in right now, we're losing money on the front end, but we're profitable. You know, so that's something to keep in mind as well, right? A lot of people gotta understand sometimes you can't profit on the front end.
For sure. Sure.
Anyway, not to get off subject. So what was the question again?
Yeah, so pretty much there is the approach when it comes to paid advertising, which is, how do I spend $1, make more than $1? And that initial transactional mentality only gets you so far as a business owner, because there's a lot more money to be made after that first purchase, after that first transaction.
Oh yeah.
What was the mindset going into getting more revenue from the existing buyer list?
Yeah, the first purchase is nothing. You don't have a real business if you don't have multiple levels and long life cycles, and you have a grasp on that. So the purpose to solving the problem of how do we get people to stay, why are they leaving after 3 months, how do we increase this, was why the hell are they here in the first place? You know, we
Got it.
serve people, so we need to figure out how to serve them more. 1 second. Cut this part out because my laptop's being trippy.
It's all good.
All right. Okay, we're good. So we're in business to serve people. So we figure out what the hell do they want? You know, they're here in the first place. What do they love about this? And it's almost like making your customer a part of your business by really understanding, like, how can we make this more valuable for you? I mean, I have like a specific, like 7 questions that I usually do. And I don't want to regurgitate them right here, but I'll throw a PDF or something after this.
Sure.
But you want to understand them. You want to know, like, what made you join in the first place. That's incredibly insightful. Like, you want to know their biggest doubt about joining. You want to know, like, what they were attempting to solve by enlisting your services. You want to know what they've got so far. You know, how did joining help you overcome that obstacle? What do you like most about this? You know, what's stopping you from telling your friends? And with that, you should get enough information. If you just have a basic understanding and knowing that, like, you know, the biases that are pretty apparent in focus groups and things like that. So maybe read like a blog post about how to take a survey properly, because a lot of the time your customer has a lot of biases and you have to be able to see those and say, what he really meant by this is this. You have to have that kind of creativity and foresight to do it successfully.
And have enough experience so you can spot those biases, for sure, because otherwise you take it at face value. Absolutely,
yeah. You know, and they say the customer's always right, but I like to say the customer is full of shit.
That's a very different approach. So if you look at even that process, I think when you say, all those questions that you have that you were laying out, and we'll attach a PDF for the people who are listening and to find afterwards. But with this process of, you know, you're spending money on advertising, whether it's on Facebook or other channels, you get a customer, and then the goal is, how do I just get more customers, right, in that same funnel? But what you're saying is, once you have that customer, are you able to extract information and knowledge, or, you know, any kind of actionable data that you can use, not only to go back and fix and optimize your cold like advertising, but also come up with different offers like on the back end? Is there, like, how do you know if you're on the right track when you're asking those questions?
Well, on top of building trust and demonstrating value to your customer, like, you want to kind of incentivize repeat behavior. So it depends on your business model. But for example, the e-commerce business I'm involved in right now, like, we start incentivizing people right off the bat, like, hey, refer your friend immediately after purchase. Refer your friends, we'll give you money. 10 days later, leave a review, we'll give you a discount. And what we're doing is get them to be involved with us, and also pushing them to purchase more by incentivizing them. So, I mean, if you have someone, again, it depends on business model. So if we talk about a specific one, it may be more productive. But if you have milestones like customer makes a repeat purchase, or customer signs up for a monthly program, how many months are they staying? Like, the more they engage with you, the more it's like a relationship. It kind of deepens, right? You want to form habits with your products.
So the offer that you developed and that you were working on is primarily like a transformational, like high ticket offer.
Yeah. Yeah. You can call it life coaching. That's basically what it is. Majority
of people who come into that funnel, they see a bunch of education and a bunch of content that eventually they go into a low ticket product or a high ticket like information product of $1,000 or $2,000, and eventually get to a point where they're seeing an offer of $5,000 to $25,000.
That's one funnel, and we've also found it very profitable, and more so than the previous kind of value ladder. That's pretty typical. We found it almost more effective to right away gauge the problem and promise the solution, but it requires good salesmanship and a good sales team and that kind of infrastructure. It's not really possible through email and content and stuff. It requires hustlers basically to take a cold lead Facebook ad and turn them into $1,000 a month person, and then a month later turn them into a $12,000 a year customer.
Right. And we
get customers with both, but I think the latter has been more effective just because it's a shorter life cycle from lead to customer.
Yeah, and we have clients right now that are going straight from Facebook ad to a webinar funnel and selling a $6,000 program because the pain is so deep and because the solution is so like the gap is so big that it's pretty obvious, you know, that the investment is a no-brainer. But for every business or for, you know, a lot wider scope of businesses, that's not always possible. And so assuming that we're working with like an education company or a transformation company where there's information and coaching involved, how would you go about like that first step of defining a potential offer that you can even introduce?
Okay, let's get creative and actually walk through this. Give me an example of a business so I can kind of so we
Yeah.
can paint a picture for the listeners.
So I'll give you an example, which is like I'm one of those people that is in the educational space, and then there's a coaching offer on the back end, which is Media Buyer Accelerator. So there's a bunch of information like this podcast, fast tracks, and different smaller information products, but all of it leads to high ticket coaching.
Got it. So your target is media buyers / entrepreneurs who want to use Facebook ads.
Correct.
So that's like always step one is like, who the hell are we trying to reach? Like what level are they at? Are you trying to hit up the newbie who wants to launch some ads so he can travel? Does he want to be a consultant? Does he want to build his own business? Like getting incredibly specific is a good start, and then figuring out what's like the quickest way you can demonstrate value. And I think in my experience, the ads that have crushed it are the ones that are just valuable in their own as an advertisement. Like people read them and they're like, fuck yeah. Like without signing up, without anything, like they've got value just from reading your stuff. That makes them more curious to see what's next. Like what happens if I give this guy money?
Right.
So were we talking about just hypothetically starting a funnel for your stuff?
But even like for information and coaching like programs, right? If you look at them, the first part is actually defining like, what is it that I could offer these guys? And so from your standpoint, you're doing it for this client at that point. How did you start that process? Because you're making an offer to them, right? And so this is, there's already momentum in that offer where you were saying, we usually charge $1,000. Let's see if we can charge $12,000.
Okay, yeah, okay. Got it. I got off track a little bit. So we surveyed those customers. The client flew me to one of his events, and basically my job was to talk to all his customers. I asked them those series of questions. I literally put together a survey, and then after I had hundreds of responses from different people, and we had like an overwhelming thing. It's like, what do people love about this? They love the friendships and brotherhood they develop, right? That was more valuable to people than the content or the speakers and all the million perks that we try to offer to make things look attractive. Nobody really gave a shit. They were like, these are my friends. Like, I love doing stuff with them. So the two things we concluded was like, okay, these guys like cool experiences and they like the friendship. So we created this like new tier of membership where it's like, yo, you need to commit to a year if you want to be a part of this. And the way we kind of positioned that was like, yo, this is a brotherhood. We don't want you to come and dip. Like everyone trusts each other.
Right.
You know, these are deep friendships and like, we need to know you're committed. So that's the way we kind of structured the offer. It wasn't like, hey, sign up for a year and give us a lot of money. It was more like, we need to know you're a serious person and you want to be a part of this. So we didn't really change the offer, right? We just sold it as like a special surprise trip for people who committed to the year. And we kind of promoted that. But the main thing was, I think we created a sort of separatism. It's like, yo, are you like seriously invested in this? Or are you like one of those guys that are going to leave after 2 months? Like we don't, you know, we're all in it for the long term.
Right. And so when you're listening and surveying all the people, were there any answers that could potentially take you off track? Because I know I've done these type of surveys and some of them are very seductive, and it's like the siren song where you think that that's actually what people want, but that's not the truth. So how do you make a decision of those were the only two things that mattered and everything else was just like nice to have or cherry on top?
So, I mean, that requires creativity and foresight and also like a little bit of an analytical mind. I think that's why good copywriter consultants charge a lot of money, because it's not something you can kind of pull out of a book or like follow a script. It's more like a assumption on human nature. And like you can be wrong, obviously. You know, it's kind of like being a stock trader almost.
Gotcha. So at that point, you get all this like structure and you're asking all these questions, but at the end of the day, it's like a gut thing. Like, you know, when you have it.
A little bit, yeah. It's just a mix of creativity, analytics, foresight, and human nature, and your best guess, really.
Okay. So
I think some of the most successful marketing campaigns of all time were just some guy's best gut feeling, like, fuck it, this will do good.
right.
Like, beyond all the analytics and research and everything else, that's always the foundation.
Right. When that happens, like, you figure out that it's these two things that they care about. So immediately you guys change the offer, right? Like, in terms of just reposition the offer, the actual core offer stayed the exact same.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So
This was a new offer being introduced for the first time.
okay. So
This upsell.
what did you do differently to like actually present the offer? Because once you're able to figure out all these other things are cute, they're nice to have, these two things are what they're willing to pay for, like, now what? Like, how did you implement it?
We wrote a sales letter, old school style.
Uh-huh. And so what did you change, like, in the sales letter?
What did I implement? I made it all about brotherhood, and we positioned it as an invite to a special event. So it wasn't, so a good sales letter, it doesn't read like a pitch. Like, this was positioned as an invite to an event. Like, anytime you are creating some kind of sales letter and it's salesy, you trigger this like alarm in someone's brain and they get defensive. They're like, he's trying to sell me. Like,
Right.
what is this guy trying to sell? And then their brain is trying to just protect them the whole way through. And like, they may buy, but you don't really want to be up against that. You want it frictionless, like, oh, cool, an invite to an event. And you want it to just kind of glide. So yeah, I mean, that was the main focus of the sales letter, right? It was like brotherhood and event. That's it. That's all we talked about. We positioned it as an event invite. And then, like, just in small print at the end, it was like, oh, by the way, this is only available for yearly members. Like, sign up for your yearly membership below.
Right.
And like, we almost made it a no-brainer by kind of building the desire for the event and then saying, oh, by the way. So in this case, it fucking crushed it. Yeah, it was like,
Right.
the first time we presented, it was like 75% conversion. Like, most of the room ended up converting, and similar numbers. They run it annually every year now. Similar numbers, so it's held up.
So to say that brotherhood is important versus like actually communicating it, that's a challenge, you know? So
Yeah.
how do you communicate something intangible like brotherhood?
Well, we paint the picture in their mind of like what an amazing event they're going to have and the things they're going to experience and how they're going to feel after. Like one of the biggest appeals that I liked was like, you'll have something you can talk about for years and years to come.
Right.
So, I mean, you want to paint the picture, like, you don't want to convince someone why brotherhood. We already know that these guys value that. If we tried to lecture them on the importance of brotherhood, and studies show that men
Sure.
like, they're like, what the fuck, man? Like, don't lecture me on this stuff. I already know.
Right.
So we pretty much just positioned it as a really awesome event, tapping into their desire for brotherhood and experiences with their brothers.
Right. So like, are there any triggers or are there any ways that you are able to like call that out? Because with something like brotherhood, it's very easy to say it, like I'm saying, but like to actually get emotional reactions from that, it sounds a lot more difficult. Is that the case?
I'm just looking, I'm skimming this letter. I haven't seen it in a while. I don't know. I think the emotion this elicits, man, is basically excitement and exclusivity. And I think part of the reason it was successful is people didn't want to feel left out because they already had these relationships with all these guys. So
Right.
I think what it created was like, if some guys join this higher tier and get kind of separated, you know, these guys are going to get left behind.
Right.
It's kind of preying on some weird stuff a little bit.
But that's just
Almost like,
nature, you know.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And you guys created scarcity out of that too. And so that was one of the elements that you were mentioning. One, it's invite only. And then I'm assuming like everyone doesn't get accepted. And so why do you think like that part of it worked?
The scarcity?
Yeah.
Well, just like any scarcity, especially in this, which is like a actually come to this event, you can get invited.
Right.
Nobody wants to be left behind. And that's about it. What ended up happening with this offer, because obviously we exceeded the scarcity, is we ended up just creating more trips, which was kind of determined while we were already planning the whole promotion.
Right.
It's like, what happens if 75 people join and we say there's only 25? Well, shit, I guess we got to make another trip for the new guys.
Right.
You know,
Right. And
that's typically baked into a lot of offers. Some people think it's kind of unethical or fake scarcity. It's like, yeah, there's levels, and it depends what kind of marketer you are and what kind of business person you are.
And so at that point, like this was sold in person, right? So they got a physical letter at the event?
Yep.
Okay. And so they got a physical letter, and then how do people actually redeem or claim their spot?
So we already have their credit card information and payment stuff on file, which is,
Gotcha.
I'll just backtrack. It's also why sometimes we charge money for webinars just to attend, because it's much easier to, if we're selling something on the webinar, just, get that okay from someone on the phone and say, okay, we're going to charge you. But yeah, so we already had their information, and the offer just glided them through to check this box, sign right here, confirm some few details, and we billed them. I think, like, usually in those cases, people get swept up in emotions and they may regret it later. Like, we did have a few refunds like that. They were like, they were just in the moment, but the majority went well. And then just back to like a good sales letter, there's no freaking friction, right? If I was like, enter all your credit card details here, that creates friction. It gives people reasons to start doubting things. But if it flows from like, it sucks you in, starts painting a picture, like all your desires are flowing, then it starts like just reaffirming your beliefs and letting you know this is legit, and just kind of quelling your doubts while you're reading it, but not directly. Because you never want to trigger somebody's, oh shit, someone's trying to sell me mode. Like, the best advertisements don't look like advertisements.
Right.
So it just flows to the end. Check this box. Yes, I would like to attend, sign some things, and that's it. Yes, I authorize you. Please charge me $12,000. That's about it. I'll attach it to the PDF. It's everything. The forms are on it, checkbox, all that stuff.
Perfect. So if you're listening to this, if you go to adtipsforadpros.com, we'll make sure to give access to that in the group. And so we'll put it in there. And so when people are going through this process, so they get a letter and then they are signing a document, or maybe it's like digital. And so they're saying yes, and that's it, right? There's not a sales process per se. They're already emotionally at a peak. They're at the event. They see an offer and they just claim it. Is that right?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, for live events, you always want to get people at peak excitement. So sometimes we would like schedule like before a sales, like this happened during the kind of salesy part, right? The pitch part of the conference, but right before we scheduled like the peak emotional experience, right? Just so people are feeling good. And you see this at conferences when you have people, come on guys, let's stretch, come on, let's jump around. Like it's elicit positive emotions, because nobody wants to buy something if they're bored and tired and dehydrated and hungry.
Right. I got you. And
nobody likes to buy in negative states.
For sure.
Unless you're selling like something to fix their problem.
Right. But even then, if you can paint like that, the pain and the gap, and then actually show them that it's possible, and give them an offer at that point, it's a lot easier.
For those kind of offers, I think it's totally understanding. It's like, I understand you. Let me explain this in your shoes, so you can be like, oh, you get me. That's exactly what I'm going through.
Right.
Because it's like, that's the biggest disconnect, when your ad is not genuine and someone is like, this guy doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. Like, I see weight loss. I see like ads targeted gym bros, and I'm like, dude, no gym bro talks like that. Like, they're going to be like an alien to them,
Right. And so can you walk through the numbers just so it's clear for people if they were to do an offer like this, or just based off the results that you got, how many people were like at an event at that point, and then how many people took up the offer? So I'm just going to the document you sent here as well.
Let me pull up the details, because this was years ago, and I didn't think we were going to dive that deep into it.
No worries. I see on
I think this was 2016.
Yeah, I see 30, so 45 paying members at an event, right? Is that right? I see on
Okay,
the,
got it.
yeah.
Yep. Yep. So there was 45 people and 34 of them ended up accepting the offer. So something like 75% of people. So
Got it.
that generated 408,000. And like just for marketing sake, I could say in an hour, in less than an hour, because like
Right.
we handed them out and we said, if you're in, please bring them to the front, which also probably helped the sales process.
Right.
Kind of like if you're seeing all these guys like excited, like, yes, I'm in, and you're sitting in your chair, like, oh, well, that's like the best social proof you can have. Like every marketer uses social proof. When you see like a stampede of people, that triggers like the most Robert Cialdini like influence principle. It's like, I want to go where the herd is.
Right. For sure.
I need to go stand in line with them.
It's easier to make that decision, for sure.
Absolutely.
And so with this type of offer, you're mentioning that you can use this over and over again. And so is that like, even from like the next event, I don't know how frequent these events were, but is that something that was easy to implement?
Yeah, this letter gets run annually. And now the business model is a bit changed. So like, for example, we understand, and the baseline of about 75% conversion, it's held up as far as I know, but I don't know from this year because I don't work with that company anymore. But it just changed the model, right? Because it goes from a front end sale is worth 1,000 to a front end sale is probably worth 12,000 for like 7 out of 10 of these leads, right? It's so that kind of planning helped with our ad budgets and we could spend more.
For sure.
And it got to the point where we're like, dude, even if we're spending 1,000 to get a customer to our events, which was never the case, it was always much cheaper. Like even if we break even on that acquisition, like some of them are going to convert into annual members.
Right.
So it just gave us a much better business model with bigger margins and just more room to operate, which I think every business should have that. Like in what I'm doing with e-commerce right now, sometimes I pay affiliates so much that like we're losing money on the front end, but I'm like, okay, well, the typical customer is spending like $800 with us. So it doesn't matter if I lose $50 to get a customer.
Right. Got it. And so for people who have like a information business or a coaching business, like what would be your recommendation to them when going through this process of adding like a new high ticket offer?
Understand your customers, talk to them, survey as many as you can, get in bed with them, really. Just find out how to make it much better for them.
Right. And what we'll do
read between the lines of what they say.
And what we'll do is we'll add the questions that you had, because I think just going through different types of questions just to pull out the truth or closest thing to the truth from them, and then reading between the lines like you're saying, that goes such a long way in actually figuring out who they are in reality.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're just making assumptions based off of troll comments on Facebook or random like emails that you get, instead of like a controlled environment where you can filter the input and then decide on what the actual output is.
Well, those 7 questions will bring you a lot of insight into your business, not just for introducing an upsell to give more value, but just to figure out where you may have some issues with your perception, marketplace, your positioning.
Perfect. Awesome, Alon. Where can people find you if they want to reach out or get in touch with you?
Facebook is the best. I don't do any marketing services work anymore, but I have been playing with the idea of working with one person if they're fucking awesome. That's basically the prerequisite. So yeah, just hit me up on Facebook.
Awesome.
I'm sure my name will be linked or something. I'm not going to be like www. That's so 2005, huh?
That's funny. So you're already tagged in the Facebook group, and it's I don't know how many more Alon Shabos there are. So I'm sure
there's one. He's like a famous chef. He's kind of ranking on SEO better than me. So
we'll have to fix that. Awesome, man. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you jumping on, man, and I will see you guys on the next one.
All right. Bye, Nehal.